Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and welcome once again to Pop Culture Comix in Overland Park, Kansas. It's time for brand new comic book reviews. As usual, I'm going to count down my top 3 mainstream DC Marvel books, then I'm going to do an indie book, then I'm going to do a kids book. So without further ado, let's take a look at my number 3 book for this week, Ultimate Fallout, number 3 from Marvel. 3 seemingly disconnected vignettes are told in one issue rather than one fluid story. While each is quite different, they all share a common, somewhat subtle theme: control. In the first part, Tony Stark is offered a seat in a club of the richest and most influential business people in the world. And while he questions their motivations of using their money to do the right thing, he asks who they are to decide what's right. They point out to him that it makes more sense to use his money to influence the world rather than put his life on the line as Iron Man. As a superhero, he'll surely get himself killed. The second, and by far the strongest, focuses on Kitty Pryde, who's particularly taking Peter's death hard and is angry with those who didn't know him for treating him like a hero now that he's dead when they didn't when he was alive. It's easier, she says, to have a dead hero, because you can't control a living one. And finally, the third story is about the Hulk and Nick Fury's interest in finding a way to control him. There's a lot going on in 22 pages, and that control theme plays in even more than I'm talking about here, both on and below the surface, and questions about psychology, morality, society, and politics, all centering on the death of Spider-Man, who, like Superman when he died, feels as present here because of his effect on the world at large as he did when he was alive. I should note, too, that I haven't been keeping a close watch on the Ultimate Continuity lately, and haven't even read another issue in this series. And with my prior knowledge of Marvel and the blurb at the beginning, which nicely catches the reader up to speed, and a lot of great visual storytelling as well from artist Steve Kurth, who cleverly uses a couple full-page action spreads to get ideas or background across when there's not an actual big action scene in the whole story. And at the risk of being predictable, my number 2 book this week is Detective Comics, number 880. Now, I really try to mix things up and not review the same series all the time, but I can't help but put Detective on the list once again. Maybe if it wasn't coming out so often lately, I wouldn't have to. I feel like it would be irresponsible to avoid choosing this issue when it really is Snyder's best one so far. I wondered about the validity of bringing in the Joker when he's been doing so much interesting and complex detective stories without major villains. But he sold me on it here, and to say why would be too telling. We're close to the end of this run, of course, and I will say it's not running off in left field with some new Joker direction, nor does it seem to be a situation where the Joker has really been the big mastermind behind everything the whole time. His addition makes sense, and more importantly, doesn't change the tone at all. And Commissioner Gordon's family's history with the Joker takes center stage, which is just what I was hoping would happen, as this has very much become Gordon's book over time. But this is also Dick's best issue of the series to date, as pulling off Batman without Bruce Wayne around is a lot tougher when the Joker suddenly escapes. I thought the ending a couple issues ago was wicked twisted when Gordon's son showed his true colors, but what we discover here is even worse. And Jock's on top of his game too, giving us the scariest full-page spread he's drawn up until now. Again, I know I've been recommending this nearly since it started, but it really is still incredibly unpredictable, haunting, and brilliant. And my number 1 book for this week is Captain America Bucky, number 660. I doubt if anyone on the planet has a greater appreciation, much less a greater knowledge, of Captain America than Ed Brubaker. He and Mark Andreyko write these characters and their history like they can't get enough of it, and their thoughtful enthusiasm oozes off the page. I can rarely recall feeling this involved in a flashback story. Then again, it doesn't really feel like a flashback story. Brubaker reveals a pivotal point in Bucky Barnes' life. In this one issue, the first in a 5-issue arc, he chronicles the death of Bucky's father to the events that led to Bucky becoming Captain America's partner. The classic theme of the literal and figurative masks superheroes wear is invoked, and we instantly begin to understand what's behind the fundamental differences in the personalities and psyches of Steve and Bucky. Bucky inherited his father's temper, and when his father is gone, he no longer has anyone to guide him, until fate brings he and Steve Rogers together. Brubaker writes Bucky as a very human teenage boy. He works hard, he tries to live up to his father's expectations, but he also lets his emotions boil up inside of him until he snaps. These writers make all of this real and relevant, putting words in characters' mouths that sound natural for the World War II era, and they use this opportunity to create plausible background that feels necessary, not convoluted contrivances so that characters' behaviors and affiliations are easily explained. Sam Nee's art is appropriately minimalistic, and the color palette is sparse and almost dreary, as if this were a comic book drawn in the 40s and the color had faded. I can't say enough good things about this comic. A perfect jumping on point, especially if you enjoyed the Captain America movie and you're looking for more. Of course, the film strays away from the comic book Bucky's origins a little, but if you want some period Captain America, pick this book up. And for my indie book of the week, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to do Bongo's Futurama Comics, number 56. Now, I'm not really that big into The Simpsons or Futurama, but I've read a few issues of both from Bongo over the last several months, both recent stuff and books from back in the early 90s when the company was just getting started, and I'm amazed by how well the quality of humor and plotting has held up. The comedy here is absolutely up to par with the TV show, with the same biting satire and clever pop culture references you'd expect from the show. In this issue, Fry accidentally blows up the Earth, only to find out that it wasn't the Earth at all, but a restaurant in a chain called Earthy's, which has planet-sized stores all over the universe, a creepy clown for its owner and mascot, and the company is so large it has achieved galaxy status. So Fry and his friends have to work off the damages by serving it in Earthy's restaurant. Naturally, there's a lot of commentary and criticism of McDonald's and the fast food industry itself, but it doesn't just hit you with puns and jokes on that subject ad nauseum. It takes the opportunity to find other areas to poke fun of as well, which naturally springs out of this topic, and this is really why I chose this particular issue. There's a section in the middle that both parodies and pays homage to classic famous rock bands, as Bender goes online to find new music for Earthy's jukebox. Since he's a robot, he can just go into the internet himself, and we get to see a physical manifestation of the web as he interacts with Sgt. Pepper, Kiss, Prince, and others. But since we're in internet territory, the book also makes fun of cyberspace itself, and Bender argues with the Twitter bird, who naturally only speaks in 140 characters, and has to deal with the wrath of the virtual music industry when he illegally downloads songs. But it never strays too far away from science fiction, which is what Futurama, of course, parodies most, and there's a hilarious Star Trek reference when Fry tells Bender not to run amok, and he responds with, "I never get any amok time." The plot is sufficiently entertaining and preposterous for Futurama, and the pop culture gags are top-notch. And finally, by request, for our kids' comic this week, we're going to take a look at Mega Man number 3 from Archie. I have to confess that though I did grow up with classic Mario, Sonic, the lesser-known Bubsy, and dabbled a little in Zelda, I've never played a Mega Man game. I don't know how, but I totally missed that franchise growing up, and I didn't even realize how big a deal it was in the gaming community until video games were well into the 3D platforming era. Since I've been praising the Sonic comics of late, I've had several requests to take a look at Mega Man. So I tried this, admittedly without having read the rest of this arc, which I know is based on the original game, but since I haven't played it, I have to assume there's a nostalgic component to this, like with Sonic, that I'm completely missing. I really appreciate that there's a narrative here beyond rehashing video game levels in comic book form. In fact, much more than Sonic Genesis has in its first issue, but it's hardly fair to compare them since this story is more than halfway through. I could kind of get past that with Sonic, though, because the book seemed totally aware that the game wasn't really very narrative-worthy, so it took a tongue-in-cheek approach and allowed itself to be a hilarious, sometimes nearly self-deprecating jaunt down memory lane. This issue of Mega Man doesn't have the same wink-at-the-camera attitude, or at least not that I can tell. It seems to try to take itself more seriously, but I kind of wish it wouldn't. Mega Man learns a lesson about controlling power. In this case, the weapons he gets from the enemies he fights, and that happens fairly early. He then spends a lot of time apologizing for his mistakes and calling himself evil. But then again, I suppose he's a child and he has a very innocent view of things, so he's quick to hate himself for doing anything to hurt anyone. I suppose what I'm getting at is, I would like this more if it was more of an all-ages book rather than aiming itself so hard at kids. The dialogue is a little sparse and elementary for my taste. On the other hand, it's probably also vintage Mega Man, and it seems that a lot of Mega Man fans really enjoy it. The art is fantastic, and I love the classic look of all the enemies and of Mega Man's arch-nemesis, Dr. Wily. So I'm going to come down on it this way. I think it's probably a great book to introduce younger kids to comics with, and Mega Man fans are bound to enjoy it on the same level I'm loving Sonic Genesis, which certainly isn't brilliant plotting or character-driven fiction either. It did, absolutely, though, make me want to sit down and play some 2D side-scrollers and to finally sample the Mega Man games. A ton of great books came out this week, so here are several other things that are totally worth your time. Gotham City Sirens number 25. The penultimate issue. Poison Ivy is out for Catwoman's blood and looking for help to do her in. I should note that some of the artwork here is the best I've seen from Andre Gonaldo, whose art is what really got me back into this book a few issues back. Action Comics, number 903. Doomsday teams up with Superman and his friends to fight the other Doomsdays. Kind of. Find out the twist that makes that make any sense. The anticipated Amazing Spider-Man, number 666. New York is really happy with Peter lately, who's going through several changes and trying to juggle his job, his girlfriend, and all the superhero teams he's on. But some of New York's populace is going through spider-like changes of their own. An oversized issue with lots and lots of stuff going on. Of course, Venom number 5. Flash Thompson comes home to his family, who seems less than proud of him, of course, not knowing what he really does for a living. And finally, a new mini I've really been enjoying, Captain America Corps #2. A team of Captain Americas from different time periods who fight in an alternate reality where there never was a Captain America. Also just out for the last couple weeks are the Batman Return of Bruce Wayne figures. Here is the prehistoric Batman. There's also a High Seas Batman. That's the Pirate Batman. Wild West Batman, and the Witch Hunter Batman. And I also wanted to show the Arkham Asylum Series 2 figures. Here's Bane. There's also an Armored Batman, Zaz, and Poison Ivy. And hey, if you're ever in the Kansas City area, be sure to check out Pop Culture Comix right here in Overland Park, Kansas. That's where I'm at this very moment. It's our official sponsor, and it's my very favorite place to get comic books. If you're not in the area, be sure to support your own local comic book store if you happen to have one. And thanks a lot for watching me review things, and I'll be back with you once again next week. I'm Captain Logan, and happy reading.